Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. I still remember the warmth of Sophie's hand in mine as we strolled through the bustling streets of Chicago, the air thick with the promise of a good convention. The city was alive, with the sounds of laughter and chatter wafting from every corner, an orchestra of urban life that contrasted with the serene comfort of our marriage. After over a decade of partnership, we had built a solid foundation, one that sparkled with laughter, late-night debates, and dreams of children we both longed for. Yet, we had postponed that dream, prioritizing our careers over the cries of little ones that never echoed in our home. As the law convention began, I could feel the excitement coursing through Sophie. She thrived in this atmosphere, her laughter infectious as she mingled with colleagues, the bright lights reflecting off her hair like strands of gold. I felt a swell of pride watching her move through the crowd with confidence, exchanging ideas and jokes with the best in the field. Yet, amidst the thrill, a nagging feeling tugged at my gut. "Hey, you," I said, pulling her aside during a break, trying to catch her eye. "You know you're the star of this show, right?" She chuckled, her eyes sparkling. "You're just saying that because you're my husband." "No, really. Look at you. You've got them all hanging on your every word." Sophie blushed, the hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Thanks, Mark. It feels good to be here. I've been working so hard, and this is, well, it's exhilarating." The convention continued, and I noticed Sophie's energy change. As the evening progressed, she began to laugh a little too loudly, lean in a little too close to the male attendees. I brushed it off initially, attributing it to the excitement of the event and the champagne flowing freely at every gathering. But as we found ourselves alone in our hotel room later that night, the distance between us felt more pronounced. "Mark," she said, her tone suddenly serious. "I've been thinking." "About what?" I asked, eager for her thoughts. "About exploring options." I laughed nervously, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Options? Like what?" "Trying a new restaurant." Sophie looked at me, her expression soft yet intense. "No, I mean really exploring what it would be like to be free for a weekend. Without the constraints of our lives." My heart sank. "Sophie, what do you mean? Are you suggesting infidelity?" Her lips curled into a small smile, but it was laced with a hint of mischief. "I want to see what it would be like to step outside the boundaries of our marriage, to experience something different." I blinked in disbelief, trying to process the weight of her confession. The wind outside howled like the fury inside me. "Are you serious?" I could barely manage to whisper. "I am. I need to know what I want, and maybe this will help me find out. Have you thought about what this means for us?" I replied, feeling the blood drain from my face. "What about the children we wanted? The life we've built together?" Her expression shifted then, the light in her eyes dimming. "Maybe it's not too late, but I need to know what I want first. And I need a weekend to find out. Do you have any idea how this sounds?" I said, my voice rising. "You're talking about throwing away everything we've worked for, everything we are." "Mark, please. Just hear me out," she urged, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "I thought we were both feeling stuck. I thought it might help us. It doesn't mean I don't love you." I felt my heart shatter in slow motion. "It feels like you're trying to break us apart. You're looking for a way out, and it's not what I want." "I'm not trying to hurt you," she insisted, her voice trembling. "I just want to explore my own identity. I feel like I've lost myself in our routine." As silence filled the room, I could feel the distance between us stretch and solidify like concrete. It was a chasm that neither of us seemed equipped to cross. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand that she return to the woman I had loved so fiercely. But instead, I sat there in silence, feeling the ground beneath me begin to crumble. "Maybe we should take a break," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper, the words heavy on my tongue. "Maybe you're right," she replied, her gaze falling to the floor. "Maybe we need to think about what we really want." The wind outside rattled the windows, echoing the turmoil within me. That night, as I lay awake, I realized that our lives had been irrevocably altered. A shift had occurred in the wind, and I was left standing on the precipice, uncertain of where we would land. The days following Sophie's revelation were a blur of confusion and heartbreak. I woke each morning to the cold light of reality, hoping that it had all been a nightmare, but with each passing moment, the truth of our situation settled deeper into my bones. It was as if I had been thrust into a storm, tossed about by waves of betrayal and uncertainty, unable to find my footing. Each morning, I forced myself to go through the motions, showering, dressing, and commuting to work, but everything felt hollow. My colleagues noticed the change. I had become a shadow of the man I once was. My laughter, once a constant companion, was replaced by an emptiness that clung to me like a second skin. One afternoon, I sat in my office, staring blankly at a case file on my desk. The words blurred together, and the legal jargon felt meaningless. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Jack, my closest friend and a fellow lawyer. "Hey, Mark. You in the office?" he asked, his voice cheery. "Yeah, just going through some stuff," I replied, trying to mask the fatigue in my tone. "Listen, I was thinking about grabbing some drinks after work. You should join. It might do you some good to get out for a bit," Jack suggested. "Thanks, but I don't think I'm up for it," I replied, staring at the case file, feeling like a weight was pressing on my chest. "Come on, man. It's just drinks. You've been cooped up in there for days. You need to talk about whatever's bothering you," Jack pressed. I sighed, rubbing my temples. "It's complicated, Jack. I don't even know where to start." "Start with the basics, then. What's going on with you and Sophie?" The mention of her name sent a pang through my heart. She wants to explore infidelity," I confessed, the words slipping out before I could stop them. There was a moment of silence on the line. "What? Are you serious? Like, really serious?" "Yeah, she wants a weekend to figure things out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like everything we built is crumbling." "Dude, that's messed up. Have you talked to her about how this is affecting you?" Jack asked, his tone shifting to concern. "I tried," I replied, my voice breaking. "But I feel like she's already made up her mind. I don't know how to fight for something that feels like it's slipping away." "Maybe you need to think about what you want, Mark. It's not just about her," Jack urged. "You deserve to be happy, too." His words hung in the air, and I realized that I had been so focused on Sophie's desires that I had neglected my own. The thought sent a chill down my spine. I'm just so overwhelmed right now. I don't know how to navigate this. "Look, let's meet for drinks tonight. Just you and me. No work, just talk," Jack insisted. "It might help you sort through your thoughts." After a long pause, I finally relented. "Okay, fine. I'll meet you at that bar on Lincoln." "Great. I'll see you at 7, Jack said, sounding relieved. As the day dragged on, I found myself pondering Jack's words. What did I truly want? Could I really let go of everything Sophie and I had built together? I spent the afternoon lost in thought, wrestling with the realization that I couldn't continue to be the passive participant in my own life. That evening, I met Jack at the bar. The atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and clinking glasses, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I ordered a whiskey, hoping the burn would dull the ache in my chest. "Hey, man," Jack said as he slid into the booth across from me. "How you holding up?" I took a deep breath, the familiar taste of the whiskey warming my throat. "I'm not sure. Every time I think about Sophie, I feel like I'm losing a part of myself." "Maybe you need to let her go," Jack suggested gently. "If she's not willing to fight for you, what's the point of holding on?" "I don't know if I'm ready for that," I admitted, staring into my glass. "But I can't keep feeling like this, either. I can't just sit back and watch our marriage crumble." "What if you took charge? Maybe you could initiate a divorce," Jack proposed, leaning forward, his eyes serious. "It might be painful, but it could be what you need to start healing." The thought echoed in my mind, reverberating with an unexpected sense of clarity. A divorce. Just like that. It feels so final. Sometimes, you need to make a clean break to move on. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're valuing yourself enough to choose happiness, Jack said firmly. As I contemplated his words, I felt a flicker of resolve igniting within me. Maybe he was right. I had spent so much time caught in the whirlwind of Sophie's desires that I had forgotten about my own needs. I nodded slowly, the decision taking root in my heart. I think I need to do it. I need to protect myself. I can't keep waiting for her to choose me. Jack raised his glass in a toast, a proud smile breaking across his face. To new beginnings, then. To new beginnings, I echoed, the weight of the world slowly lifting from my shoulders. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt the tumult of emotions swirling within me, but amid the chaos, there was a sense of clarity. I had made a decision, not just for Sophie, but for myself. I was ready to take control of my life, to step out of the shadows of indecision and embrace whatever came next. Years rolled by like waves lapping at the shore, each one pulling me further from the storm of my marriage. After initiating the divorce, I plunged into my work, immersing myself in the world of family law with a fervor that left little room for anything else. At first, the distraction was a relief, a way to escape the haunting memories of what I had lost. I filled my days with back-to-back meetings, consultations, and court appearances, each one serving as a reminder of the lives I was helping to mend, lives that weren't tethered to the pain of betrayal. But while I was helping others navigate their separations, I often found myself grappling with my own unresolved emotions. I still thought of Sophie, often in the quiet moments when the noise of the world faded away. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying our past, the laughter, the shared dreams, the moments that had once felt so secure. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I met Jack for dinner at our favorite restaurant. As I took a sip of my drink, he raised an eyebrow, noting my distant expression. "Hey, you've been quiet. What's going on in that head of yours?" Jack asked, pushing aside his plate of half-eaten pasta. "I don't know, man. I just feel like I'm stuck in this endless cycle of work and loneliness," I confessed, running a hand through my hair. "I thought the divorce would bring clarity, but instead, it feels like a fog has settled in." Jack leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "You're allowed to feel that way. It's a big change, and it's okay to miss the life you had." "I miss her," I admitted, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "I thought letting go would make it easier, but it hasn't. I thought time would heal everything." "It will, but you have to let yourself grieve," Jack advised, his voice gentle. "It's okay to mourn the loss of what you had. Just don't let it consume you." "Some days I think about reaching out," I said, feeling vulnerable. "But what would I even say? It's been years." Jack looked thoughtful. "Maybe start by acknowledging the past. You both deserve that. Just remember, the past doesn't have to define your future." That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself grappling with Jack's words. The idea of reaching out to Sophie felt both terrifying and liberating. I had built walls around my heart, but perhaps it was time to dismantle them, if only a little. A few weeks later, I found myself attending a family law seminar. It was a prestigious event, bringing together professionals from across the country to discuss emerging trends in divorce and custody battles. As I navigated the crowded conference hall, I tried to push aside the memories that flickered like ghosts in my mind. I focused on the speakers, the presentations, the opportunity to learn and network. But as I walked past a group of lawyers, I caught a familiar laugh, a sound that sent a jolt of recognition through me. I turned, and there she was, Sophie. My heart raced, an avalanche of emotions crashing over me. She looked different, older, perhaps wiser, yet that same spark still danced in her eyes. I felt an unexpected urge to walk over and say something, anything, but fear rooted me to the spot. "Mark," her voice was soft, tentative. I turned to find her standing a few feet away, a mix of surprise and warmth in her gaze. "Sophie," I managed, my voice catching. "It's been a long time," she said, a nervous smile spreading across her face. "How have you been?" "Busy, mostly. Work has kept me on my toes," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. "And you? How's life treating you?" "Pretty well, actually," she said, her expression brightening. "I've been working on some new projects and focusing on myself. It's been a journey." The air between us was charged, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I glanced around, aware of the bustle of the seminar, but in that moment, it felt as if we were in our own world. "I've thought about you often," I admitted, the honesty surprising even myself. "I never really got closure after everything." Sophie's smile faltered, and she looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blouse. "I've thought about it too. About us. It's been hard to let go of what we had. I didn't know what to expect when I filed for divorce. I thought it would be easier," I confessed. "But the reality hit me like a brick wall. I lost my best friend." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I was so lost at that time. I thought I needed to explore, but all it did was make me realize how much I had taken for granted." The weight of her words resonated deeply within me, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite in my chest. Do you think we could talk about what happened? Maybe figure out what went wrong?" "I would like that," Sophie said, her voice trembling slightly. "I think we owe it to ourselves to try and understand. We've both changed, and maybe we can find a way to move forward, whatever that looks like." As we exchanged phone numbers, a cautious optimism began to blossom within me. It felt as if the storm clouds that had loomed over my heart were beginning to part, revealing a sliver of sunlight breaking through. Later that evening, as I left the seminar, I reflected on our conversation. It had been years since I'd felt this kind of connection, and although the path ahead was uncertain, I was ready to explore it. Maybe it wasn't too late for us to redefine our relationship, to find closure, or perhaps even a new beginning. Time had created distance, but it had also fostered growth, and I was finally ready to embrace whatever came next. A week after our encounter at the seminar, Sophie and I agreed to meet at a small cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. It was one of those places that felt timeless, with warm wooden tables, dim lighting, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee hanging in the air. It felt appropriate, neutral ground, a space where we could finally confront the ghosts of our past. As I entered, I saw Sophie seated by the window, absently stirring a cup of tea. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and for a moment, I was transported back to our early days, when everything had felt so simple. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and approached her table. "Hey," I said softly. She looked up, and her eyes softened when they met mine. "Hey, Mark." I sat down, and for a few moments, we just looked at each other, the silence filled with 1,000 unspoken words. Finally, I cleared my throat, breaking the tension. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," she replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'm glad you reached out. I've been thinking a lot about us," I began, my fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup. "About everything that happened. I feel like I never really got to understand why you wanted to explore things outside of our marriage." Sophie sighed, her eyes drifting to the window. "I've asked myself that question 100 times since we divorced," she admitted. "I think, back then, I felt trapped. Not by you, but by the expectations I had placed on myself. We had been together for so long, and I started to wonder if I had missed out on something." I nodded, trying to process her words. "I get that, in a way. We were so focused on our careers, on building a life, that maybe we forgot to nurture ourselves as individuals." "Exactly," she said, her voice tinged with regret. "I thought that by exploring other possibilities, I'd find the freedom I was looking for. But instead, I felt more lost than ever. It was like chasing a mirage, thinking it would bring me happiness when, in reality, I was running away from what mattered most." I took a sip of my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. And what about us, Sophie? What did we mean to you back then? You meant everything to me, Mark, she replied, her eyes welling up. You were my partner, my confidant, my best friend. But I was so afraid of losing myself that I ended up losing you instead. I swallowed hard, feeling the sting of her words. I've spent years wondering if there was something I could have done differently. If I had been more attentive, more present, maybe things would have turned out differently. Don't do that, she said firmly, reaching across the table to place her hand over mine. Don't blame yourself. I made a choice, a selfish, reckless choice, and it had nothing to do with you not being enough. You were always enough. The warmth of her touch sent a shiver down my spine, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel the comfort of her hand in mine, just as I had so many years ago. I appreciate you saying that, I murmured. But it still hurt, Sophie. More than I can put into words. I know, she said, her voice cracking. And I'm so sorry for the pain I caused. If I could go back, I'd do it differently. I would have fought for us instead of running away. We sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. The cafe buzzed around us, the clinking of cups and the murmur of conversations creating a backdrop to our own story. Why did you agree to meet me today? I asked, breaking the silence. After all this time, because I needed to face the consequences of my actions, she replied, her gaze unwavering. I've carried the guilt of what I did for so long, and I realized that I owed you the truth. I needed to acknowledge the pain I caused, not just for you but for myself as well. I nodded slowly, feeling a sense of closure begin to settle over me. And now that you've done that, what do you want? What are you looking for? Sophie took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving mine. I don't know, Mark. Part of me hopes that maybe we can find a way to be in each other's lives again. But I understand if that's not something you want. I know I don't have the right to ask for that. I leaned back in my chair, considering her words. It's not that simple, I said finally. There's a part of me that still cares about you. That probably always will. But I'm not sure I can ever go back to what we had. I'm not asking for that, she said quickly. I don't expect us to pick up where we left off. I want to know if there's a chance we could start over. Even if it's just as friends. The vulnerability in her voice was undeniable, and I felt my resolve begin to soften. Friends, I repeated, testing the word on my tongue. That's a lot to ask. I know, she whispered. But if there's even a small part of you that's willing to try, I'd like to take that chance. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I had loved, the woman I still, in some ways, loved. I saw her flaws, her mistakes, but I also saw her strength and her honesty. It was a complicated, messy, beautiful picture, and in that moment, I realized that maybe I could find room for that in my life again. Okay, I said softly, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. We can try. But it's going to take time. Sophie's face lit up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I understand. And I'm willing to take it one step at a time. No expectations, no pressure. Good, I replied, squeezing her hand gently before letting it go. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the best things in life are worth waiting for. As we finished our coffee and chatted about lighter topics, the latest legal cases, mutual friends, and even a bit of reminiscing, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't haunted by the past. Instead, I felt hopeful, ready to embrace whatever came next, even if it meant starting with the most fragile of connections, the possibility of friendship. And as we walked out of the cafe, side by side, I couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, this conversation was the beginning of something new, a story that was ours to write, one chapter at a time.